Hello everybody and welcome to Purgatory Ironworks. I am your host, Trenton, and today I've got a pretty good show for you. Today I'm going to show you how to make an iron leaf. It can be for a keychain, it can be for other floral projects. It's one of those basic things that you make that you're going to end up, hang on, I've got a cat at my feet down here, that you're going to end up making a lot, and they're a good money maker, especially if you make it into a keychain and sell it at your local events. Now, the interesting thing about this particular video is that I'm going to show you how to make this on the anvil with just a hammer and a chisel, okay? Show you how to do that. That's basic Leaf 101. But then we're going to use the spring swage that we made earlier, and I'm going to show you the difference in the two leaves. It makes a difference in the neatness, and it looks a little bit better. But for this particular job, we're going to be using 1/2 inch stock, and I usually just have a bar. I don't cut this to size. I just use a long bar and then work it and cut it as I go. So let me pop this in the fire, bring it up to heat, and let's make a leaf. We're going to start with a very short taper. Now you can play with this and make different sized leaves as you go, but we're going to do just a short, quick, blunt one. Now we are using 1/2 inch stock for this. I wanted something with a little bit more beef, but the majority of the leaves you probably want to make, you can make it from 3/8 square stock and you're going to be just fine. In fact, it'll probably be a lot easier on you. But just like that, we have our taper, and now we'll take another heat. Now, the way you do this on the anvil is that when I take that other heat, I'm going to put about 1 inch of untouched stock on the edge of the anvil, just like this. I'm then going to mush, and I'm going to put a shoulder on there. Again, notice how this bar is tilted up, just like this. So I'm going to bite into it on this side, and then I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees and put a shoulder on that side. This is going to delineate what's going to be the blade of our leaf from what will become the stem. We have a good heat, again about 1 inch over there. I'm going to cut about halfway into the bar. You can see it right there. And now I'm going to roll it 90 degrees at the same edge. And back and forth just a little bit. Now I'm probably going to bring this down to about 3/16 of an inch square. You guys can see it's kind of funky looking in the angle. But you basically pushed all the material to one unbroken edge just like that. So now what will happen, we'll take another heat. We're going to roll this up onto the diamond, up onto that spine piece right there. And then we're going to flatten that out. And that's what's going to become the body of our leaf. Got a good heat. And this is where you're really just going to have to put the elbow grease in. This 1/2 inch material does not play. Now you're going to notice as you're working this, you can really control the shape of that leaf. If you have good hammer control, you basically just make it squish out where it looks weird. And there you go. Now pay attention to this end right here. That doesn't look too supernatural simply because that's where we had to put it over that sharp edge. It's going to be real important here in a minute. But for right now, we need to add a little bit of decoration right here. So what we can do, and you don't have to do this while it's at red heat. It can be done at this temperature right here. And this is where you want to take your chisel and actually cut some veining in. Let me grab my Blacksmith's third hand. I'm going to set that right there. Let's raise this up just a little bit. And I'm not going to do anything super impressive here. I am going to overlap my chisel blows. The idea is that they look like one continuous cut. You don't want it to look like a slasher film where you're just somebody's chopping things to pieces. If you overlap your cuts and you're careful and patient, you can get good straight lines. So there's one there. And just a couple to spice it up here. All right. And there you go. Now, what I will do now is that this leaf's a little bit flat. So I'm going to get a block of wood and I'm going to take my ball peen. And when I heat it up, I'm then going to take this and hammer it down into the block of wood so it gives this a three-dimensional shape, something a little more leaf-like. Now you can leave it like that. It will sell, but I always like mine to look a little more natural. Now one caveat I'd like to add, remember, as you're working this 1/2 inch steel, it's chunky. It's a lot of material. But when you flatten that leaf out, now you've gone from chunky to really thin. It would not be uncommon that if you just pop that bad boy in there, not thinking about it, turn the heat on, and then just say, it'll be fine. It won't be fine. You're going from thick metal that doesn't burn easily to super thin metal that does. So pay close attention when you put your piece back in there so you don't draw back a nub. I have a highly specialized tool known as a stump here. You can see my cuts. You put your cuts face down and then use the ball of your ball peen. Come on. Use a various number of holes. Used to be a theme in my life. But here we go. And again, I don't have to do anything super fancy. But you can see it turns up and it gives it a nice three-dimensional shape. That doesn't look too bad. That side's still a little flat. Let's go right here. Yaka, 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 yaka. And voila. Let's give her a scrub. I like adding the sound effects myself. But there we go. Now we're ready to get on to our stem. Now remember that I mentioned before that the Hardy tools really change how you can work, that they're super, super important. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to remove this leaf from this bar by using a hot cut in the anvil. I want you to take note of how quickly it will happen as compared to having to saw this thing off with a hacksaw after you cool it down and lock it somewhere. Again, these tools are worth the investment because they speed your process and they make things easy. Very quickly, we come right over to our Hardy tool. I'm only going to take about 1 inch. I cut on 2 sides just to make it a little bit neater, and bam, just like that, we are done, and we are ready to go to work. Again, it flew right off, over and done with, and now we're ready to actually start pulling out our stem. Take note of how effective that tool was and how much time it would have saved you over having to saw through it or remove it some other way. That's why it is worth investing in these tools and taking the time to go to a welding shop and have these things done because they're going to help you tremendously. We have our leaf. Now, doing a taper here is going to be a little bit different than what I've explained before, simply because we've got so little material to work with. But if you're careful, you see I'm pulling that front taper down. Be careful of the piece turning into a rhombozoid. Make sure and keep it square. And take your time. There is no race to catch, or excuse me, no horse to catch, no race to win. It's been a long day, folks. I'll go back in and take another heat, and I'll continue pulling this out. One of the reasons I did this leaf in 1/2 inch, which is really big stock, is I wanted you guys to be able to see the details a little bit better. For most everything that you're going to do, whether it be a keychain or a necklace piece, probably needs to be done out of 3/8. It's a lot lighter. If you put this around somebody's neck and they take a left turn real quick, they're going to knock somebody out. So 3/8 is what you're going to want to use. Be mindful of your heat. Easy to melt something. Now, notice I'm kind of staying away from this up here until we get this thinned out. That's usually a good idea. until we get this thin and we got a little bit of hammerhead clearance, it's kind of better just to get this done and then kind of snug up to the edge here. It will save you a lot of grief, because if you're trying to work it heavy from this to start with, you're usually going to screw up and miss, and it's going to ginkify it, and you're going to be upset. So work it down out here first, and then go back to the edge there. Here we are again. Again, I'm keeping this square, or I'm making a valiant attempt to. That's right. As I say, I'm keeping it square, it twists. That's how it works here in the television land. But I think I'm good enough now. I will bring my heat in, and now I'm going to attack that piece up there. You're going to use the corner or the very edge of that anvil and very carefully tap that thing round. On the side of our anvil, notice I'm not killing it. Light blows, just to shape it so I don't hit the leaf itself. All right, let's take a look here. You can see we've got a nice taper here. Now this is still pretty thick, but again, for what I'm going to do with it, it's going to be fine. You can go nuts on that. You can draw it out super long, super thin, make it kind of like grapevines. That will work as well. I am cold, so I'm going to call it good right there. We're going to bend it so I can take myself in the house sooner as opposed to later. Now, bending this, you can use just pliers, but I want to show you again, we have a handy Hardy tool, and it's going to make our job here so much easier. Check that out. I stress again, these Hardy tools are worth your time and investment. Now, I could have sat there and fought with this. However, have that tool and it's done in just a few seconds. Now that we've got it cooled down, I want you to look at something very specific. You see these edges right here? You see how they're still really sharp and chonky looking? Even this right here, we've got a bit of a fold here that could have turned into a cold shut. And if you've done leaves, how many times have you had the leaf fall off the stem because there was a cold shut right there? All of this is a direct result of having to use this edge. And even myself, who's pretty practiced at this, I would have to take extra time and be very careful to do this correctly. If I wanted to make this a really good looking product, I'd have to come back in with files and clean all that up, because it's not the best way to do it. So real quick, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a piece of 1/2 inch. I'm going to draw another leaf blade, but instead of coming over the edge of the anvil, I want to show you the difference in how this is going to look when you use a spring swage. Let's take our point real quick. Now, I didn't prep this end. This is the raw end that I cut off the anvil earlier. If you want to be really neat, you can hit that with a file or a grinder just to take that little burr off the end. I usually don't worry about it if it's not too noticeable. There's my point, and now we're ready to actually fuller this. Into the spring swage. Now, look at the difference on how that looks from how this looked when it first came out. That's pretty unreal, and that's going to translate when you flatten out your leaf. But again, look what a nice, smooth transition that you have right in there. So I'll tell you what, just for kicks and giggles, I'm going to flatten out our leaf so you can really see the difference. Turn it up on the diamond. Got to put the turbocharger on this joker. And let's take a look. Let me cool it down. Now, it should be apparent how different these two guys are as far as just in neatness. Now, you saw me wailing away on that joker. Even the leaf looks a little bit neater because of the way that transition occurs. And were we to pull this on out into our stem, it's going to look a lot better than that guy right there. This is why we use those tools. It makes things go better, faster, more efficiently, and that means you got more money coming in at the end of the day. Tooling is king in blacksmithing. I cannot stress this enough. The better your tools, the better quality your work, and the faster work you're going to produce. One of the most caustic things to learning this craft is being a purist, or what we know as a stitch counter. That's the guy at the reenactment that goes around and checks your collar and makes sure it's got the historically accurate number of stitches. Don't be that guy. It's going to hinder your ability to learn about the craft. Even my teacher, Jay Riekert in Andersonville, wrote in his book that he went to the Madison Conference in Georgia, and when he got up there, coming from a purist Civil War reenactor background, he said he was horrified to see power hammers and electric tools, as he said, in plain view of the public, but he changed at that point. He saw what was happening. He said that he saw that the correct tools were being used to make good work. If a electric weld could be hidden and it looked good, use it. If it needed to be a rivet, well then use a rivet. But do not deny yourself the education of good tooling, because it's going to slow you down and it's going to make you a worse smith. Tooling is king in blacksmithing. Folks, y'all be good. As always, you know the drill. Hey, really helps if you like the video. Helps really a lot if you subscribe. And what's that? Cannot stand it, but here we go. Hang on. If you like the video, please tell us about it in the comments below. You guys be good.